This is a CBC News special report.
Tonight, a rare look inside the Islamic terrorist networks still operating in Europe. Exclusive interviews with the two religious leaders accused of being the main recruiters for Al-Qaeda in Europe. And an intimate portrait of their star pupil, Zacharias Moussaoui, the man accused of being the 20th hijacker in the attack against the World Trade Center. Terence McKenna's feature documentary report, The Recruiters. Good evening, I'm Peter Mansbridge. This week, the United States Congress began hearing testimony about whether the September 11th attacks could have been prevented. U.S. intelligence committees are reviewing the evidence of Islamic extremist activity that was available long before the attacks. Tonight, a stunning inside look at the terrorist network that has been operating for years in Europe and the United Kingdom. You will learn how intelligence services were monitoring Al-Qaeda operations long before last year's attack. And you will meet the two Muslim religious figures who are widely regarded as the leaders of Al-Qaeda operations in Europe. Terence McKenna has prepared this CBC News feature documentary report, The Recruiters.
The Muslims shouldn't be calling for democracy. Democracy is hypocrisy. Brothers, Islam is supreme ideology. Islam is better than democracy, better than socialism. It is supreme. It is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Friday afternoon outside the Regent Park Mosque in central London. Every week on the Muslim holy day, Islamic radicals come to scream out their support for Osama bin Laden and their hatred for the West, especially the United States and Great Britain.
America and the British government, who gave the Jews Palestine in 1947?
The police regularly attend these demonstrations and even photograph the participants, but they take no action. If no crimes have been committed on British soil, there is nothing the police can do.
No, you know what Arafat is doing? He's arresting Mujahideen in Palestine.
One of the key objectives of these men is to recruit Mujahideen, new soldiers for jihad, Islamic holy war.
We need rulers that implement Islam.
These men are the devoted followers of several infamous Islamic clerics who live in Britain. One of the most radical resides on Noel Road, in this quiet London neighborhood. Abu Qatada is a Palestinian living in England as a political refugee. He is accused of being a key recruiter for Al-Qaeda. In a rare interview at his home, he said it was the duty of every Muslim to support jihad, holy war.
The role of mujahideen is dictated by what the Prophet said. Whoever fights to make the word of God supreme, then it is for the sake of God. If the jihad is to make the word of God supreme, we call it Islamic jihad.
Abu Qatada says he is merely a religious leader and teacher, but there are allegations that he is much more than that. There is an international trail of evidence against Abu Qatada, and it leads back to his home region in the Middle East, to Jordan. In the mid-1990s, bombs began going off here in Jordan, and intelligence officials in Amman uncovered evidence of a massive terrorist network with operations in the Middle East, Europe, Canada, and the United States. The police here complained that they began raising the alarm with Western intelligence agencies, but that no one seemed to pay any serious attention to the evidence. The first bomb was discovered here at the American school in Amman in 1998. It was disarmed before anyone was killed. Then another bomb went off, probably accidentally, in a car at the Jerusalem Hotel in downtown Amman, where many Americans stay. Once again, a large loss of life was narrowly averted. Evidence led police to arrest a group of young Muslim militants. Under interrogation, they admitted their role in a large conspiracy. They even reenacted for the cameras how they had placed the explosives. They also admitted that there was a plan to blow up hundreds of American tourists at the Radisson Hotel in Amman and other tourist sites to mark the turn of the millennium. The captured plotters identified this man, Raed Hijazi, as their immediate superior. Hijazi, here on trial in the military court in Amman, is an American-born Palestinian who became very religious when he was attending Stanford University in California. When he was captured, he confessed that he had been recruited into the al-Qaeda terrorist network and swore an oath of allegiance to Osama bin Laden. But he later claimed the confession was extracted under torture. The military judge here apparently did not believe him. Hijazi has been found guilty and sentenced to death.
Mr. Hijazi, how do you answer these allegations against you?
Colonel Mahmoud Obidat, the prosecutor in the Millennium Terror trial in Jordan, told me that the mastermind of the plot was none other than Abu Qatada in London. Qatada has actually been tried in absentia and found guilty of conspiracy to commit terrorism in Jordan. The Jordanian government has accused you of planning and funding terrorist activities in Jordan. How do you respond to that?
I'm not surprised that the Jordanian government is saying such things. The rest of the world discovers oil and gold, while the Jordanian government loves using its security services to discover and incriminate organizations.
وهذا طبعا من الابتزاز ومحاولة دولة صغيرة كالأردن أن تلعب دور الكبار.
Do you approve of violent attacks against the Jordanian regime?
أنا أعتقد بأن هذه الأنظمة
I believe that the regimes which rule in countries like Jordan are bad regimes. Our nations will not be happy unless these regimes are overthrown.
أسلوب التغيير.
Jordan is not the only country making allegations against Abu Qatada. More evidence against him comes from Algeria, where newspapers regularly identify him as the mastermind of the GIA, the Algerian armed Islamic group that has committed numerous massacres in Algeria. The Algerian GIA has conducted terrorist operations in Europe for years, including this 1994 airline hijacking in France. And the notorious Paris subway bombings in 1995 and 96, which killed 22 and injured over 200.
This is an ongoing accusation. At one time I was told that I was the spiritual father of the GIA, and now I'm told that I'm the spiritual father of Al-Qaeda. But the truth is, I have no connection to any organization or any group whatsoever.
In the late 1990s, Osama bin Laden was able to convince the Algerian GIA and many other terrorist groups to join his Al-Qaeda coalition and to redirect their activities against the United States. In February 1998, Al-Qaeda issued a fatwa, or religious edict, asking Muslims to kill Americans, including civilians, anywhere in the world they can be found. The United States has identified Abu Qatada as a member of the Fatwa Committee of Al-Qaeda. He denies it, but is candid about his support for bin Laden and his hatred for the United States. Do you incite hatred against the United States?
No doubt, if anyone asks me, are Americans the enemy of our people? My answer would be yes, they are the enemy.
In 1998, Osama bin Laden issued this fatwa against the United States. Did you agree with that fatwa?
No doubt that my previous answer about promoting or inciting hatred towards America because of what they are doing to our peoples will explain that.
What is your opinion of Osama bin Laden?
I believe that he's not a demon. He's a human being, a Muslim. He has felt the injustice and the humiliation suffered by our people. This is what made bin Laden the way he is. And that's why he doesn't like the American regime.
Abu Qatada has now been placed on the American government's list of most wanted terrorists. His name also appears on the terrorist lists in France and in Canada. But because he has committed no crimes in Britain, he is allowed to live unmolested as a political refugee in London. Gilles Capel is a leading academic expert on Islamic militants. He says there are dozens of suspected terrorists like Abu Qatada living in London.
Britain was perceived mainly as a sanctuary, and no terrorist activity took place in Britain, probably for that reason. Britain was even nicknamed by the militants Londonistan, meaning that people from Afghanistan, Pakistan, what you call in English the stands, had gathered in London, where they found, for many of them, political asylum, and they were able to organize that networks. Probably the condition for the deal, but this was never made explicit, of course, was that they would not have any activity against British interests on British soil.
In Paris, Judge Jean-Louis Bruguière is one of the world's leading experts on terrorism. He has successfully prosecuted dozens of terrorism cases, and he has long been exasperated by the safe harbor provided for Islamic terrorist suspects by Great Britain. He is familiar with the term Londonistan.
C'est un mot un peu polémique qui stigmatise, disons, en forçant le trait, une situation qui n'est probablement pas tout à fait fausse. Je veux dire, il est incontestable que se sont concentrés, à un moment donné, et toujours, donc en Angleterre et à Londres en particulier, un certain nombre d'individus qui ont profité, je veux dire, d'une législation et d'une liberté offerte par le système britannique. Et ces personnages savaient bien qu'en dehors du territoire anglais, bon, ils n'auraient pas pu, ils auraient été interpellés. En tout cas en France, certainement.
In London, the Finsbury Park Mosque has long been identified as a key recruiting ground for terrorists. Many young men recruited here ended up in the Afghanistan training camps of Osama bin Laden. In 1999, this hidden camera recording by Britain's Channel 4 demonstrated how the mosque is a gathering place for many suspected terrorists.
In Algeria, you was terrorist.
Yeah. You are going in Algerian gun?
Yeah.
Yes, you are? Yeah. Kalashnikov, Molotov. Yeah, it's good.
Yes, because Mujahideen is fighting. Yeah.
One journalist who went undercover to find out about terrorist activities in Britain was Reda Hussein, an Algerian who fled his country because of death threats from the GIA terrorist group. He moved his family to Paris and then to London, where he was approached by the French and British intelligence services to spy on Islamic radicals.
In Algeria, they have been this kind of people, I mean, like monster. I mean, when you get out from your house in the morning, you have to say bye to all your family because you don't know if you are going back tonight. So, when I have been asked by the French to start to work with them in intelligence, it was for me, I mean, I have been given a chance to fight these people who sentenced me to death 4 years ago. And when I have been here in England, I mean, I started to know many people, and I found out exactly that who is doing this, who is buying weapons, who is raising money, who is claiming assassination, who is claiming massacres, and then it was a duty for me to fight, I mean, his kind of people.
Inside the Finsbury Park Mosque, Young men can easily buy false passports and ID cards, which have been altered to give them new identities.
Yes, I'm looking at the stamp.
Look.
It's good.
It's good.
Yes.
At one point, they do say, as you can see here.
In 1998, Reda Hussein came to the Finsbury Park Mosque posing as a recruit.
They do business inside, and
He was shown how to obtain false ID cards which would entitle him to collect welfare payments from the British government under several false identities.
card you can get an income support of about £50 a week, and you can rent a room or flat which is paid by the state. So if you can get 3 or 4 different identities, you can get 4 or 5 income and 4 and 5 flats, and then you can make whatever you want.
The controversial religious leader in charge of the Finsbury Park Mosque is the influential and inflammatory Abu Hamza. A native of Egypt, he grew up in Britain where he was trained as an engineer. He lost one eye and both hands in a landmine explosion when he was working in Afghanistan. He jokes about the allegation that his mosque is a terrorist recruiting center.
Well, this is a mosque. You came to the mosque, you didn't find any nuclear capabilities or sort of Dr. No security. It's just a normal mosque, and I think this country's got a lot of intelligence and a lot of policing where they can monitor and control this very well. But you see, the media war can only, when they don't like the message, they just have to attack the messenger.
But some of the, many of these people who are accused of terrorist acts say they came here, they were recruited here.
Well, they can say whatever they want because maybe they've been bribed to tell them out to set me back. And my solicitor have already compiled many cases against the MI5 and Scotland Yard when they try to bribe people and actually harass them to make statements against me and the mosque. So why not? It doesn't surprise me, of course.
Reda Hussein says that many young men have been recruited, brainwashed, and turned into murderers by Abu Hamza.
There is one word, he's monster. This kind of people have to be jailed for life. Because whenever he gets an opportunity to kill you, he will do it. He will do it without any remorse or something like that. Because for him, when he's doing this kind of job, he's going to paradise. And to go to paradise, you have to kill. In the name of God. Which is completely wrong.
Have you spoken about bringing back Islam through the barrel of a gun?
Well, it's not only me. Any religion. Are you a Christian?
And that seems immaterial to me.
No, it does. Because if you are a Christian, you will see some verses in your book says what Jesus said, sell your coat and buy a sword and carry your cross and follow me. When people are deaf and they applying obscenity by force, the only way to protect yourself from obscenity and disbelief is just to defend yourself. But the aggressors always call those who defend themselves terrorists because he has to call them a name to kill them.
The port of Aden in Yemen has been the focus of a lot of terrorist activity in recent years. Western intelligence services have discovered that there was a plot to blow up a visiting American naval ship called the Sullivans on a refueling stop here in December 1999. The plot was to coincide with the Millennium attacks in Jordan and the Los Angeles airport, but here too the attempt failed. A small boatload of explosives sank on its way to the attack. The Sullivans was spared. But 10 months later, a similar attack against the USS Cole succeeded, killing 17 American sailors. Once again, some evidence from the attack led back to the Islamic radicals in Britain. Did you approve of the attack on the USS Cole in Yemen?
Of course. I agree with it.
Why?
Because it's a kind of occupation, humiliation for our country. And as I say, have you been polite like the people in Sweden, and people think you go and visit and you don't harass people, you don't blackmail, you don't play arrogant, then you're welcome. But if you go there to flex your mighty and humiliate people, you deserve a whack.
The Yemeni government have
Abu Hamza himself has been charged with terrorist activities by the government in Yemen, and his son was jailed in Yemen, accused of planning another terrorist attack along with Hamza's son-in-law. How do you answer the charges against you in Yemen?
How do I answer it? My boys are in prison there, and they ask for my extradition, and they haven't proved anything. So how do I answer it? I answer, because am I a Muslim, am I guilty until I prove I'm innocent, or am I innocent until I prove I'm guilty? You prove what you claim, and then just have to sit down and watch.
What was your son doing there?
Learning Arabic.
Mm-hmm. So he was not involved in any terrorist activities?
Has to be proven.
The Yemeni government has asked for the extradition of Abu Hamza to face terrorism charges in Aden. But because Britain does not have an extradition treaty with Yemen, he is safe. Jordan has asked for the extradition of Abu Qatada to face terrorism charges. But he too is safe, again because there is no extradition treaty between the UK and Jordan. Reda Hussein finds that outrageous.
For me, there is no difference between him and Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden, he's in here, he's in London. Maybe there is some Osama bin Ladens are across Europe. Because Osama bin Laden, what he is doing? He is recruiting people, training them, and send them to do a jihad, which is the same case for Abu Qatada. So he got all kind of things in which he should be in prison and put in The Hague, not in London, in The Hague, in the International Tribunal.
The International Court at The Hague.
Absolutely.
And tried as a war.
The same as he is now Slobodan Milosevic or many other people.
Abu Hamza told British television that people like Reda Hussein are traitors to Islam and should be killed.
Anybody who is cooperating and spying for Muslims against their holy war, he is a legitimate target. And sometimes they are Muslims still, but they are tempted by the gifts by the other governments, and they still in Islam, but they are working against Islam.
So it's okay to slit their throats, is it?
It's okay to kill them by slitting their throats or by shooting them any way which should deteriorate them and others like them to do such a thing. This is an Islamic thing. It's nothing to do with Algeria, nothing to do with Egypt. This is an Islamic principle which will be the scenario of the next century.
Don't you worry that these GIA people and Abu Qatada's people, Abu Hamza's people, will come and get you?
I am ready to die. And I know if I will die, I will die as a martyr. The same as they think themselves. I am fighting, as they said, the baddies. Now, what I am doing is for the right, for humanity, for saving lives and trying to help many people from across the world. I want them to understand which kind of this kind of people. It's not Islam what they are doing. They have nothing to do with Islam. Islam is complete peace religion. And I'm ready to die if they want to get me.
When we come back, how the Islamic recruiters in Britain have been conspiring with terrorist sleeper cells throughout Europe. Osama bin Laden built his terrorist training camps in Afghanistan in the mid-1990s. Western intelligence services quickly established that a major source of recruitment for these camps were mosques and Islamic cultural centers in North America and Europe. The Finsbury Park Mosque was identified as the major recruitment center in England. In Italy, evidence pointed to the Islamic Cultural Center in Milan. There are an estimated 100,000 Muslims living in the Milan area, and the vast majority practice their religion in peace. But police found a pattern of Islamic extremist activity linked to this center. Judge Stefano D'Ambroso is the leading prosecutor of terrorist cases in Italy.
We have proof that even this Islamic center was involved in recruitment for Afghanistan. Obviously, we are sure that what was going on in Afghanistan was military and paramilitary training in camps. But none of these people involved in recruitment admitted that this was what was going on. They claim that Afghanistan was simply the best place for Muslims to express their religious beliefs and live a religious life.
When Italian police investigated how young men would get from the Milan Cultural Center to the bin Laden training camps in Afghanistan, they discovered that a key figure in the operation was none other than Abu Hamza in London.
Abu Hamza è un altro personaggio di grosso rilievo.
Abu Hamza is a leader who played a role in directly linking the Milan cell with Afghanistan.
Quindi era per noi, è stato considerato per noi un personaggio.
For us, he was the person who confirmed the connection between this cell and Afghanistan.
In Milan, police were following suspected terrorists and wiretapping their phone conversations. Attention focused on the Via Dubini, on the home of one Tunisian man who recently returned from Afghanistan. His name is Sami Ben Khamis. In one early monitored telephone conversation, Ben Khamis identified his group as part of Al-Qaeda and referred to Osama bin Laden by one of his nicknames, the Sheikh.
No, the great boss. They are part of the Sheikh's movement. Understand?
Yes, I understand. They are part of bin Laden's group.
Yes, you understood. All of them follow him. Most of all the Tunisians. Because the entire group that is here is a part of the Sheikh's movement.
We ascertained that his activities were mainly to provide false documents for clandestine immigration and for strategic logistical support. In reality, he was the point of reference for the various brothers, as they call themselves, who passed through Italy. Therefore, he played a very important role because for a while now, Italy has been considered a very important country for these activities within Europe.
Early in the year 2000, Italian police followed Sami Ben Khamis to the Milan railroad station, where he embarked on the first of a series of train trips around Europe. Trips which revealed a great deal about Al-Qaeda recruiting operations on the continent. Ben Khamis traveled north through Switzerland and Germany to Brussels, Belgium. Waiting for him at the Brussels Midi station was this man, Tariq Maroufi, a local Islamic religious leader who was known for his radical activities. Belgian police followed the two men to a meeting at Maroufi's apartment on Apollo Square in Brussels.
Tariq Maroufi plays the same role as Sami Ben Khamis, but in the Tunisian network in Belgium. He's certainly the leader of the Tunisian group, and he's certainly very religious, at least publicly. But we have reason to believe that his activities extend to logistical support for terrorist activity in Europe by the Tunisian network.
For years, Tariq Maroufi had portrayed himself as a simple Muslim religious leader, but European authorities were more and more convinced that he was a key recruiter for Al-Qaeda. In December 2000, police in Frankfurt, Germany uncovered a plot to explode several bombs in the nearby city of Strasbourg. They raided this apartment building and discovered a cache of explosives and weapons inside this apartment. The police raid triggered some panic in the Al-Qaeda European network. Italian police listened in as Ben Khamis called to warn Tarek Maroufi in Belgium about the arrests.
There is danger. Members of the Bin Laden cell in Frankfurt have been captured. I'm warning you that they got half the group in Germany.
No.
Yes! Did you understand me? They arrested our brothers in Germany and they found the arms warehouse in Germany, Frankfurt. You need a cover.
What do you mean? God be with you.
Did you understand me? You need a cover. You know how?
Riteniamo di aver avuto davvero la fortuna di cogliere.
We feel really lucky that we were able to prevent this attempt.
In precedenti indagini
In prior investigations, we were able to figure out quite easily what the logistical support was for similar cells.
logistico di cellule simili, ma non eravamo mai
But we'd
arrivati
never been able to get so close as to actually prevent an attempt.
stato programmato. Quindi riteniamo davvero
Therefore, the fact that we actually were able to prevent the Strasbourg attempt is quite special to us.
Also arrested in connection to the Strasbourg plot was Abu Qatada in London, but Qatada was quickly released for lack of solid evidence. Many in Europe might be surprised to see religious leaders like Abu Qatada, Abu Hamza, and Tarek Maroufi implicated in terrorist activities, but Stefano D'Ambroso is not.
No, francamente
No. Frankly, I'm not surprised about their involvement.
non ho mai ritenuto così netta la distinzione per quanto riguardava
I've never believed that their political and religious activities were neatly separated from their terrorist activities.
terroristica in senso lato. Quindi davvero
So really, as far as this kind of person is concerned, both roles are combined.
After the Al-Qaeda attacks on the American embassies in Dar es Salaam and Nairobi in 1998, which killed 257 and wounded 5,000, attention focused on American embassies and consulates in Europe as probable Al-Qaeda targets. Security was tightened. At the U.S. Embassy in Paris, FBI agent Enrique Gemente is the legal attaché.
Well, I think the American presence overseas has always been a target, and therefore one needs to be sensitive and vigilant. At the same time, one should not, be hysteric about it. So there is a certain security measures that need to be taken in relation to what has happened in the past.
Italian magistrate Stefano D'Ambroso says it was essential to understand how the terrorist cells in each country acted together, how their work was divided.
soltanto tenendo presente l'unità dell'azione dell'associazione si riesce a
Only by keeping in mind the unity of the network can you understand how dangerous it is.
che hanno descritto
There are police collaborators who described the attack in Tanzania in 1998 against the American embassy, explaining that there were 4 cells involved in the attack,
con compiti ben compartimentati,
each with separate, well-defined tasks.
fornire le armi, un'altra
One cell supplied the arms, another forged documents,
alle persone di arrivare, quindi ha provveduto all'attività
another helped transport people around,
di queste persone verso la Tanzania, e la quarta cellula
and the fourth carried out the attack.
l'attacco. Quindi soltanto
And so you need to look at these groups as a whole.
In January 2001, the anticipation of a terrorist attack closed down the U.S. Embassy in Rome for 2 days. American officials were tight-lipped about where the threat was coming from, but Italian police sources identified Tarek Maroufi in Brussels as the prime suspect in the case. Worried that the police might be onto them, the terrorists in Milan implemented their own security measures. They started using public telephones instead of their home phones, but the police were one step ahead of them. The police had even placed a listening device inside the Dubini Street apartment of Sami Ben Khamis. The recordings of the meetings in that apartment in March 2001 provide a remarkable portrait of life inside Al-Qaeda. Ben Khamis reassures his comrades about the power of the organization they have joined.
Al-Qaeda exists from Algeria to the Philippines. They're everywhere.
Lassid Ben Henny, a 31-year-old veteran of the Afghan camps, responds.
God loves us because Europe is in our hands. The moment to strike has arrived because they are arresting everyone. We have to show them we are here. We have to show them who the Mujahideen really are. We have to be like snakes. We have to strike and then hide.
In the Milan recordings, the suspected terrorists are preparing dinner. Meanwhile, on the television, a video shows graphic, violent scenes of Al-Qaeda-trained commandos in action. Mokhtar Farid Bachucha approves.
This cassette is really scary. If people see it, they will know what it means to have your throat slit by real soldiers. The best commandos in the world. If they see this video, they'll tremble.
Around dinner, the talk turns to the explosives training they received in the Al-Qaeda camps in Afghanistan. Kamoun Mehdi remembers a building that was blown up on orders from bin Laden himself.
When the order came from the Emir, it was very nice. Because first we studied the structure, and after with the plastique, boom. The building collapsed, and then there was dust, and then a fire broke out. And that way the enemies of God were buried and burned.
In the summer of 2001, police uncovered other cells like this one in Europe. It was in Madrid, Spain, that they heard the first hints of what was going to happen on September 11th. On Friday, March 26, 2001, Italian police once again followed the suspected terrorist Sami Ben Khamis to the Milan train station. It was a key trip. This time he boarded a train for Spain. In Spain, he was eventually followed to a mysterious meeting in the city of Valencia, a city which has a substantial North African population. Here he went to a local mosque, and then to a large gathering at Al Safar on the edge of town. This trip gave police a clearer understanding of the role of Sami Ben Khamis in the European terror network.
It confirmed for us the role of Ben Khamis as leader of the Italian cell. But it also helped us understand how the people from the various European cells were in continual contact with each other. Their interaction was constantly growing, so much so that they needed to keep in frequent touch among themselves. They needed to see each other often in person, to not talk much on the phone, but to communicate directly in person. That confirmed for us not just who the leaders were, but also just how dangerous were the activities planned by the cells.
Alerted to the presence of Al-Qaeda operations in their country, Spanish police began an investigation. At the giant Central Mosque in Madrid, they learned of a group of Islamic militants which had been recruiting young men to go to Afghanistan for training. Driven away from the Central Mosque, the group took over this smaller mosque. The leader of the radical group was identified as Abu Dada, a former used car dealer. Police quickly established that Abu Dada had been traveling all over the world, notably to Afghanistan and England. Juan Coutinho is the Director General of the Spanish Federal Police.
Yo creo que la coronación es el máximo detenido de España, Abu Dada. Este era la persona que viajaba esencialmente y que hay constancia que estuvo en el Reino Unido en distintas ocasiones. Y en algunos lugares, esencialmente de Madrid, allí les pasaban algunos vídeos sobre entrenamientos y cómo preparar explosivos, y yo creo que esa era un poco la misión esencial.
From telephone and travel records, Spanish police traced Abu Dada's British connection to the small house on Noel Road in London, to Abu Qatada. Police in France, Spain, and Italy accuse you of planning and funding terrorist activities in those countries. How do you respond to that?
I haven't heard those accusations. The biggest charge against me by the French was that some of the people who planned certain actions had visited me, but I haven't heard any direct charges against me.
Abu Qatada was also connected to the terrorist group in Milan. In fact, the police listening device inside the Dubini Street apartment captured Sami Ben Kameh citing the instructions from his favorite religious leader, Abu Qatada.
Abu Qatada can convert anyone because he knows all religions, sects, and philosophies. Abu Qatada has ordered all Muslims to spend their money on the cause of Allah, no matter how much money they have, thousands, millions. It's not important. He says that money for God's cause should be given to the mujahideen and not to the mosques.
The relationship between me and those men is just that of a mufti and his students. I'm just a religious person who issues fatwas and gives sermons to other Muslims. Until now, no other relationship has been proven between me and anyone on this earth.
British police raided Abu Qatada's Noel Street house in February 2001 and found over $200,000 in cash in various currencies. How do you explain this large amount of money that was found in your possession by the British police?
Undoubtedly, the amount was exaggerated 10 times over the actual value found in my house. You can ask the British government what they found, written on the envelopes where the money was found in my house. It was written to the poor, for the needy families, for building a mosque. These are the activities for which the money was being raised. Therefore, the British government today owes every poor Muslim and every Muslim in Britain money because some of it was meant to buy a place for prayers.
In Paris, Judge Jean-Louis Bruguière has long suspected Abu Qatada of planning and financing terrorist activities.
On parle beaucoup du blanchiment, money laundering. Moi, je dirais, on a aussi des opérations dites de noircissement d'argent, c'est-à-dire l'opération inverse. C'est-à-dire de l'argent qui a une origine légale, comme par exemple de l'argent qui est collecté dans des mosquées, notamment la zakat, c'est-à-dire l'aumône légale, mais qui va être utilisé à des fins qui sont des fins, je dirais, terroristes.
These are lies. Most of the money was transferred legally, and it is known where it went. It went to the families of people imprisoned, to poor families, and Muslims who need it.
Did any of this money go to support jihad activities in other countries?
No.
Yes. The answer is yes. Like the Chechens, for example.
You mentioned that you used money to support jihad activities in Chechnya. Did you use money to support jihad activities in other countries as well?
I don't remember. This did not happen.
Are you surprised that a man like Abu Qatada has not yet been arrested?
Je crois pouvoir dire que si c'était trouvé en France, je pense qu'il aurait été arrêté dans le cadre de précédentes affaires. Bon, tel n'a pas été le cas parce qu'il était soumis à la loi britannique et que la loi britannique apparemment permettait ce genre d'action.
In April 2001, Italian police finally closed in and arrested Sami Ben Khamis and 6 members of his group in Milan. They were charged and then convicted of conspiracy to commit terrorism. In Madrid, on Avenida Pablo Neruda, Spanish police continued surveillance on the home of Abu Dada. Just days before the 9/11 attacks on the United States, they wiretapped an unidentified man telling Abu Dada, "I've prepared some things you're going to like. I'm giving classes. We've entered the field of aviation, and we've even cut the throat of the bird." Spanish police did not know what to make of the conversation until the September 11th hijackers cut the throats of the airline pilots and drove their planes into the World Trade Center. In the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks, Abu Dada was arrested in Spain, and Tariq Maroufi was arrested in Belgium. But Abu Qatada and Abu Hamza have still not been arrested in England. When we come back, the story of how both of these men may be connected to the September 11th plot against the World Trade Center. In London in 1999, there was a remarkable public meeting of Britain's Islamic radical community.
Invent your own ideas.
At this meeting, there were demands to take revenge against the US and Britain for their air attacks against Iraq. Abu Hamza unveiled a complicated proposal to attack civilian aviation. It seemed far-fetched at the time, but in light of the World Trade Center attack, it is chilling.
The idea is to slow down and make the sky very high risk for anybody who flies.
2 years ago, you were filmed in London speaking about attacking airplanes, making the sky a very high risk for anyone who flies. Why would you want to do that?
Because you are using God's gift for flying to oppress nations and kill them and maim them, and you just give them a title just to justify their killing. You can see what you're doing with God's gift for flying, so it's either for everybody or for nobody.
So you wanted to use airplanes to attack the West?
No, I wanted to use any means to stop the West aggressions for God gift flying to kill people and not allow other people to defend themselves. What do you call this when you go and bombard people and kill them by thousands just because you have the ability to fly higher? Is that anything to do with mankind and civilization, or is it just Pharaohism and tyrannical?
When you talked about bringing your battle to the airwaves, into the skies against airplanes, were you then happy when you saw
No, I was only raising...
planes hit the World Trade Center?
Everybody was happy when the planes hit the World Trade Center. Anybody tell you is not happy, they are hypocrites. From the Muslim nation, I'm telling you. Everybody.
Why?
Because let's say, this is what you teach your people in cowboy films when you see the aggressors being doing bad things, and then the hero comes and give him a couple of punches in his face. Everybody share up, isn't it? That's exactly like it is. So I would be a hypocrite if I tell you, all Muslims are happy, even non-Muslims are happy. Don't forget, you humiliate nations, so expect many punches, many people to rejoice. Never outfocus that.
After the attack on the World Trade Center, police quickly established that the leader of the hijackers was the Egyptian Mohammed Atta. When the police went to Atta's last known apartment in Germany, they discovered 19 video cassettes of the teachings of the radical Islamic cleric, Abu Qatada. Once again, Qatada denies any responsibility for the September 11th hijackers.
First of all, there is no group that belongs to me. I am a Muslim who deals with all Muslims. And there is no connection between me and any other group.
But I think that the future will bring to the West people and Muslims who are more violent than those around now.
You spoke earlier about the hatred of America. What was your reaction to the events of September 11th? Did you think that America got what was coming to it?
Do you think that by what the US is doing now, it can stop what will happen to it in the future? Not only Muslims, but there are lots of people in the world who hate the US. Is this going to end? Why doesn't the US ask itself about the reason behind all this? The Americans have never asked themselves this question, although it's a logical one. Why is this happening to us?
The victims of the September 11th terrorist attacks were almost entirely civilians. You might expect that religious leaders would frown on the killing of civilians, but not Abu Hamza.
Well, whom you are killing in Afghanistan and Iraq? Whom you are sanctioning? Saddam Hussein? You are killing the civilians and the children. And that's all what you're killing. So why it's good for you and it's not good for somebody else?
So it's justified for you to attack civilians?
You've set the standard. If you want to protect your civilians, leave other people's civilians alone.
So the World Trade Center was a legitimate target?
Well, what the World Trade Center is doing, globalization and making other countries poor and making their problem spiral, so everybody will tell you that. It's the center of evil, political and financial evil for the whole world, and nobody listens.
The killing of civilians while conducting jihad or holy war is also encouraged by Abu Qatada.
Islam prohibits the killing of women and children. But sometimes during jihad, mistakes happen, and non-combatants, women and children, do get killed. The probability of civilians being killed does not prohibit jihad from happening. This is an Islamic as well as a worldly principle.
The radical Islamic religious leaders in Britain deny any direct connection to the September 11th hijackers. But it turns out that the accused 20th hijacker, Zacharias Moussaoui, was both a student of Abu Qatada and a frequent visitor to the Finsbury Park Mosque of Abu Hamza. Do you deny that this accused 20th hijacker, Zacharias Moussaoui, attended your mosque? Did you know him here?
I don't know. There were thousands of people. This is a large mosque and 4 floors as well. How do I know them? How do I know anybody who comes here?
Zacharias Moussaoui is the only person now in custody who has been formally charged with conspiracy to commit terrorism in the September 11th attacks. When he was brought to court in Virginia last January 2nd to answer the charges, all he would say was, "In the name of Allah, I do not have anything to plead. I enter no plea. Thank you very much." The story of Zacharias Moussaoui, his radicalization at the mosques in London, and his path to September 11th provides a revealing look at the making of a terrorist. That story when we come back. The picturesque city of Narbonne on the south coast of France is the home of Zacharias Moussaoui, the man accused of being the 20th hijacker in the World Trade Center attack. His parents immigrated to this region from Morocco. He grew up in this modest house on the outskirts of town. His mother, Aika, now divorced, proudly displays pictures of her family on the living room wall. Zacharias was the youngest of 4. He has 2 sisters and 1 brother.
Un gentil garçon, calme, réfléchi, jamais de problème avec les copains. C'était des fois, il y avait des petits problèmes parce que de racisme, des trucs comme ça, mais c'était pas un garçon qui ni bagarreur ni rien. C'était très calme. C'était un garçon très calme.
Quel problème de racisme?
Oh, quand il était jeune, disons qu'on lui dit sale arabe ou négro. Voilà, et puis voilà.
Racism against immigrants is not uncommon in this part of France. Young Zacharias spent many hours playing soccer here and excelled at the game. Zacharias attended high school in Narbonne and then moved on to study commerce at college in nearby Perpignan. He was good at sports and academics, and by all accounts, well-adjusted.
Un garçon, comme tous les garçons de son âge, sortir, fréquenter les filles, boire une bière, promener, comme tous les garçons de son âge.
After university, Zacharias Moussaoui told his older brother, Abd Samad, that he wanted to learn English and do postgraduate studies in business administration.
Il avait cette réflexion que je trouvais tout à fait pertinente et intelligente, et il a décidé de partir en Angleterre. Donc il a économisé, il a laissé son appartement, il a vécu pendant 3 ou 4 mois au lycée, il a vendu sa voiture, il est parti avec ses économies, son sac à dos en Angleterre.
Zacharias Moussaoui arrived in London in 1992 and enrolled at South Bank University. He eventually graduated with a master's degree in international business. But during that time, he also started frequenting the hate-filled lectures of Abu Qatada and the diatribes of Abu Hamza, which are distributed in recruitment tapes.
You youngsters especially, what are you going to say to your grandchildren if you live that long? We have to give a sacrifice. And the sacrifice I'm talking about is the blood sacrifice. Islam needs blood today. We have to either kill or be killed. That's the only way we're going to bring back Islam. The battle of the gun.
When Zacharias would come back home for a visit during those years, his brother noticed that he was changing.
C'est quelque chose qui est apparu dans son discours petit à petit, progressivement. Au début, c'était des lieux communs, des choses choquantes, mais en regardant le journal télévisé, en regardant une actualité, en discutant avec un copain, des choses comme, par exemple, de toute façon, sont tous des mécréants. Voilà. Ou ces femmes, de toute façon, qu'est-ce qu'elles ont à travailler? Elles ont qu'à rester à la maison. Pourquoi une femme, elle conduit une voiture? Elle n'a pas à conduire une voiture. De toute façon, tout le monde est contre les musulmans. Il y a un complot juif contre les musulmans. Bon, des choses comme ça. Des choses comme ça, ce sont des choses choquantes. Moi, je ne suis pas un théologien, moi. Hein. Moi, je suis d'origine marocaine, j'ai une double nationalité, française et marocaine. Pour moi, la religion, c'est de l'épanouissement, c'est pas de la violence, ça n'a rien à voir avec une mentalité sectaire et sanguinaire. Donc moi, j'ai tout de suite été choqué par son discours, quoi. Donc j'ai voulu avoir des arguments pour pouvoir discuter avec lui, pour pouvoir l'accrocher, pour l'amener à se justifier, lui montrer que ce qu'il pouvait dire était un égarement, une erreur. Mais je me suis rendu compte que c'était pas possible d'avoir ce dialogue avec lui. Il devenait de plus en plus fermé.
Est-ce que vous avez discuté avec lui de religion, des choses, non?
Non, il était à votre place, moi j'étais là-bas dans l'autre côté, et moi je faisais la couture, et je parlais avec lui, et il ne m'a jamais parlé de quoi que ce soit pour la religion. Lui, il faisait la prière, elle y va à la salle de bain, il faisait sa prière.
Zacharias had never been very religious. And so when he visited his mother, she found it somewhat odd that he kept disappearing into the bathroom to perform his prayers. Zacharias also began to put on a lot of weight and muscle and spent a lot of time working out at gyms.
Il m'a dit, je vais m'inscrire dans un club de musculation pour faire de la musculation, pour être fort, pour pas être à la merci du premier raciste qui voudrait m'embêter. Ça, c'est des phrases qu'il m'a dit.
Zacharias Moussaoui shaved off his hair and prepared to become a soldier of God, a mujahideen, a holy warrior. He stopped visiting his family and then stopped calling. They heard through friends that he had gone to Afghanistan. He attended the Osama bin Laden training camps in 1998. He had been recruited for this training at the Finsbury Park Mosque of Abu Hamza.
You have to pump into the brother, what are you training for? It's so that you can get the kafir and crush his head in your arms, so you can wring his throat, so you can rip his intestines out. That's why you're doing training, to rip these people to pieces. Forget wasting the bullet on them, cut them in half.
C'est important les camps d'entraînement. Pourquoi? Parce que les mécanismes de l'endoctrinement, on les connaît. Ben, il suffit de donner peu à manger à quelqu'un, de le faire peu dormir et beaucoup d'activité physique, et on peut complètement le conditionner. Oui.
Zacharias' trips to Afghanistan apparently brought him to the attention of the DST, the security police in France. In the year 2000, Moussaoui's mother returned home from work and found 2 DST agents waiting at her house.
Je suis rentrée dans la ville, j'ai trouvé 2 hommes devant la porte, je lui ai demandé qu'est-ce qu'ils veulent. Et vous êtes la maman de Zakaria Moussaoui? J'ai dit oui. Il m'a dit, est-ce que vous connaissez où il est? Je dis non, je ne savais pas où il est. Je dis non. Je lui dis, qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Il y a quelque chose? Il me dit non, il n'y a rien de grave.
At the Finsbury Park Mosque in England, Abu Hamza was encouraging his followers to form small terrorist cells to carry out attacks on the enemies of Islam.
If you send an army, a battalion of 2,000 people to do an operation, right, they're going to see them a mile away. You send 5 people, qualified, trained, in and out, put the explosives, put the timers, come back, end of story. 5. And if they do get caught, it's only 5 people, no problem. So, you know, this is guerrilla warfare, brother. This is what guerrilla warfare is all about.
Ce sont des gens, comme Abu Hamza, Abu Qatada, ce sont des gens que si on leur donne l'opportunité, les moyens, ils vont agir. Ils vont commettre le meurtre, les assassinats, l'injustice. C'est qu'une question d'opportunité et de moyens.
Moi, je dis que l'Angleterre, elle est responsable de beaucoup de choses parce qu'elle a laissé la fièvre envahir toute l'Angleterre et les jeunes, ils vont en Angleterre et puis il y a pas de... On crie la haine et la vengeance devant les mosquées et les Anglais regardent ça tranquillement. Elle a laissé la fièvre monter. Et puis, qui souffre maintenant, c'est les parents de ces jeunes qui sont malheureux, qui sont dans des prisons. Et voilà.
Est-ce que c'est ça qui est arrivé avec Zacharias, vous pensez?
Peut-être c'est ça qui lui est arrivé.
Moi, je pense que l'Angleterre, le système anglais, a nourri un serpent dans son ventre et qu'il s'est fait piquer par ce serpent. Je pense que ils ne peuvent pas continuer à dire que sous prétexte de la liberté d'expression, tout le monde peut dire n'importe quoi, qu'on peut appeler à la haine.
In the year 2000, Zacharias Moussaoui started making inquiries about pilot training in the United States. His alleged participation in the September 11th plot, when we come back. The story of Zacharias Moussaoui's involvement in the September 11th plot begins here in Norman, Oklahoma, the home of the Airman Flight School. Many foreign students enroll here for flight training, and so no one thought it unusual when the lead pilots of the September 11th plot, Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehi, showed up at this school to inquire about pilot training in the summer of the year 2000.
The written test fees and the examination fees guaranteed for that price.
Flight school director Brenda Keene gave them a tour.
Muhammad Atta and Al-Shahi visited our school in July of 2000. We have a lot of people that would come and tour the school just to kind of check us out, and because there's a lot of schools in the United States, and they were just doing the same thing. I don't really remember much about the tour. It was just a normal thing, maybe an hour long. I didn't even remember giving the tour until I saw Muhammad Atta's picture all over the news and I recognized his face, but other than that, there was nothing that stands out about it at all.
3 months after the Atta al-Shehi visit, Zacharias Moussaoui sent the first of a series of emails to the same flight school in Oklahoma, inquiring about flight training. At first, he used only a code name, Zuluman Tango Tango. The recipient of the emails was Brenda Keene.
Well, Moussaoui first emailed me in September of 2000 inquiring about our commercial pilot program. I then, of course, responded to him about the courses. There were 4 emails preceding that all the way through February of 2001. We have been in business for several years and have trained a lot of foreign students, so it was not unusual for Moussaoui to contact us.
Moussaoui's September 2000 emails were coming from an account he had just set up in Malaysia. In Malaysia, he obtained letters from a company called Infocus Tech, which stated that he was the company's marketing consultant in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Europe. Infocus Tech was already on a CIA watch list for suspected terrorist activities, as were 2 Saudi men involved with the same company, Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hamzi. Both went on to become September 11th hijackers. Moussaoui traveled extensively in that time period. In December 2000, he was back in London. On December 9th, he left London's Heathrow Airport on a flight to Pakistan. Police suspect his trip to Pakistan was to connect with the bin Laden organization based in the city of Peshawar in the Northwest Frontier Province, near the Afghanistan border. On February 7th, 2001, he flew back to London. And then 2 weeks later, he flew on to Chicago and then Oklahoma. On February 26, 2001, he was enrolled as a student at the Airman Flight School in Oklahoma by Brenda Keene.
I would say Moussaoui mainly was, the best word describing is stubborn. Normally it takes me about 15 minutes to enroll a student. It took me 2.5 hours to enroll this guy. He kept wanting reconfirmation on the contract. What would happen if he overflew the course time requirements? Did he have to pay more money? And he was just very argumentative. Oh, Moussaoui was so frustrating to me. It just on and on and on. I even got to one point, we were laughing and joking at this time because I'd realized I was going to be here for a while. I actually got around my desk, walked around, put my hands around his throat and shook his head saying, Moussaoui, you're driving me crazy. He goes, I know, Miss Brenda, but if you let me just get all my questions answered today, I will leave you alone and I won't come every day bothering you. So I said, okay, let's get this over with. So I come back to my desk and sit down and continued. I finally, the only way I could get him out of my office, he wanted to go open up a bank account. So I found somebody, I begged somebody to go take him to the bank to get him out of my office finally.
At the Arvest Bank in Norman, Moussaoui opened an account and deposited $32,000 in cash. By the spring of 2001, Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehi had already completed their private pilot training at another school in Florida. Police believe that Moussaoui was rushing to catch up to their training level.
He was in a hurry, always talked about a time constraint, and as a student, physically in the airplane, he was uptight and nervous, and he would have what's called a death grip in the airplane, and that simply means that when you have the controls and you're flying, you can do this with a fingertip touch. It's very easy to fly, but he would really grip the controls so tightly, just from nervous tension, I guess, that his palms would literally sweat, and they'd say, lighten up on the controls, Moussaoui, and go, and he'd be flying like this, and his fingers would almost be red from holding them so tight.
The parallels between Zacharias Moussaoui and the September 11th hijackers are striking. Mohammed Atta was making inquiries in Florida about starting a crop dusting company. In Oklahoma, Moussaoui was making the same inquiries. In Florida, the September 11th hijackers enrolled in health clubs and were taking kickboxing lessons. In Oklahoma, Moussaoui was also enrolled in a gym and practiced martial arts. In the summer of 2001, Mohammed Atta and the other hijackers were buying knives. Moussaoui was also buying knives in Oklahoma. The problem for Moussaoui was that he was a lousy pilot. Unlike Atta and al-Shehi, he was failing his course.
Most students will solo in 10 to 20 hours. Moussaoui had 57 hours of flight time with us and was never even able to solo. He just couldn't quite get it. It got to a point that the director of operations called him into the office and said, Moussaoui, you know, something's got to give here. Either you're going to have to pay more money to continue on to the course, or you're going to have to leave. And so he said, okay, well, give me a couple of days and let me think about this, and I'll let you know what I'm going to do. And we never heard from him again.
In spite of the fact that he had failed to obtain his private pilot's license, Moussaoui wanted to move on to commercial flight training. That story when we come back. Although he had failed to qualify for a private pilot's license, Zacharias Moussaoui wanted to be trained as a commercial pilot. On May 23, 2001, he contacted the Pan Am International Flight Academy, the same school where some of the 9/11 hijackers took their training. The vice president of the company is Marilyn Ladner.
He sent an email to the company and he requested training, and he listed in his email several different aircraft that he was interested in getting, that learning to fly, to experience flying. He paraphrased it as his dream was to fly, and he listed quite a few aircraft. 747, 67, 57. He called it a big bird. His dream was to fly a big bird.
In June 2001, Moussaoui contacted the Sporty's Pilot Shop in Cincinnati, Ohio, and purchased flight deck videos to learn to fly a Boeing 747. Mohammed Atta had purchased similar flight training videos from the same store. The strongest connection between Zacharias Moussaoui and the 9/11 hijackers comes in a series of telephone conversations and financial transactions in early August 2001. Moussaoui made calls from a payphone in Oklahoma to Dusseldorf and Hamburg, Germany, to this man, Ramzi bin al-Shib, a former roommate of Mohammed Atta, who acted as the paymaster of the September 11th conspirators. Bin al-Shib had sent tens of thousands of dollars to Mohammed Atta and the other hijackers in Florida in the preceding months. In August 2001, he wired $14,000 to Zacharias Moussaoui in Oklahoma. Moussaoui apparently used the money to pay for lessons in the flight simulators of the Pan Am Flight Training Academy. The instructors there were instantly suspicious of him because of his lack of experience and because he didn't seem interested in takeoffs and landings.
The combination made it odd. When you look at the cost of the course, why would you only want a part of it? There was only ground school going on at the time, and you know, I'm not sure if he completed the whole second day. I know that the instructor was concerned that here is someone that this doesn't make sense. He only has 50-some hours. He's asking a lot of questions about systems that he has no way of using them, because he's never going to be in the cockpit of a 747 in the normal world with this level of flight experience. So why would you want that in-depth detail? It just didn't make sense.
At the Pan Am Flight Training Academy, the instructors decided to report their suspicions about Moussaoui to the FBI. On August 16, 2001, Moussaoui was placed under arrest because of immigration and visa violations. FBI anti-terrorism agents began looking for information about him. Because Moussaoui carried a French passport, one of the first calls came to the terrorism expert, Judge Jean-Louis Bruguière, in Paris.
Zakaria Moussaoui était connu, bien connu des services français. Très sincèrement, il y a peu de gens qu'on ne connaisse pas dans le cadre de cette mouvance. Je crois qu'on n'a jamais été surpris par un individu dont on nous a donné le nom à l'extérieur ou qu'on a vu en disant de qui s'agit-il. On arrive, on sort le dossier et le background du personnage. Donc lui n'a pas échappé à la règle. C'est un personnage qui était lourd, dont on connaissait la trajectoire, qui était venu en France, mais qui avait quitté la France, qui était passé en Angleterre.
You knew not only about his activities in France, but also about his activities and history in England, in those groups in England.
And outside, et à l'extérieur. Pas uniquement, on avait une vision globale, et je dirais planétaire, de M. Zakaria Moussaoui, comme nous l'avons de la plupart des gens que nous connaissons. La France ne nous intéresse pas uniquement. On n'a pas une vision hexagonale de la menace.
After Moussaoui was arrested in the United States, his mother received another call from French intelligence agents.
Avant les attentats, ils m'ont téléphoné si je sais où est Zakaria. J'ai dit non. Ils m'ont dit qu'il était en Amérique. Je lui dis qu'est-ce qu'il y a. Il m'a dit non, il n'y a rien de grave.
When the planes hit the World Trade Center on September 11th, FBI agents very quickly connected the plot to the man they already had in custody.
Zacharias Moussaoui est-il le kamikaze français qui a échoué dans sa mission?
Before long, the mugshot of Zacharias Moussaoui was flashed around the world, along with the accusation that he had conspired to kill thousands of Americans. His mother was staggered.
C'était affreux, c'était affreux. C'était affreux. Le ciel, la maison, elle me tombait sur la tête. Je roulais par terre là-bas. C'était affreux. Je pleurais, je me tapais la tête. J'ai pris cette photo qu'il y a là-bas. J'ai pleuré. J'étais à genoux par terre. J'ai regardé la télé. C'était affreux. Je le souhaite à personne, tout ça. Parce que...
Moussaoui's brother Abd Samad wanted to believe that Zacharias could not be involved, but deep down he realized that Zacharias fit the profile of a brainwashed Islamic radical who could be capable of such a crime.
C'est un détournement, une falsification de la croyance musulmane. Qu'est-ce qu'il dit? Il dit que le plus grand sacrifice, ce serait de faire le sacrifice de sa vie, se suicider en faisant un attentat. Alors là, vous avez tous les éléments. Vous avez un déracinement familial, un déracinement social et culturel et traditionnel, un déracinement économique, et puis vous avez une personne qui est tout à fait apte à aller se jeter sur une tour avec un avion.
Moi, je ne lui parle pas à Abd Samad depuis qu'il parlait de son frère comme elle a parlé. Je ne lui parle pas parce que...
Moussaoui's mother is furious that her oldest son is speaking out against his brother.
C'était un coup de poignard encore pour moi. Un coup de poignard de plus. Parce que quand j'entends parler à la télé, qu'est-ce qu'il parle de son frère, c'est des coups de couteau qui me renvoient à moi.
On doit avoir des principes dans la vie. Et on doit vivre conformément à ces principes. Ça n'empêche pas qu'on a un cœur et qu'on peut souffrir de la situation. Moi, je souffre de la situation de mon frère. C'est un déchirement pour moi de voir mon petit frère dans cette situation. Faut pas croire, c'est un déchirement. Mais il n'empêche que dans la vie, on a des principes. Et ces principes sont d'ordonner le bien, d'interdire le mal. On ne justifie pas le meurtre et l'assassinat. On ne justifie pas une idéologie de haine. Non, absolument pas. Maintenant, savoir, il faut bien différencier les choses. Savoir quelle est la part d'implication de mon frère dans cet acte absolument monstrueux, c'est une autre paire de manches. Moi, je ne suis pas un juge. Moi, je suis le frère qu'on interroge sur une idéologie, sur une pseudo-participation de mon frère. Bon, je n'en sais rien. L'idéologie, je peux en parler. J'ai pris le temps depuis ces années de l'analyser. Et je sais à quel point elle est dangereuse. Et c'est mon devoir que de mettre en garde contre cette idéologie-là. Je ne voudrais pas que d'autres familles soit déchirée comme la nôtre à cause du wahhabisme. Non. Si je peux contribuer à ce qu'il n'y ait qu'une personne qui soit préservée vis-à-vis de cette monstruosité, ben ce serait, pour moi, le pari, il est gagné.
C'est pas parce qu'il a été non plus en Angleterre qui c'est un assassin. Ou c'est pas parce qu'il a fréquenté la mosquée que c'est un assassin. Un assassin, c'est quand on sait que quelqu'un il a tué quelqu'un.
Zacharias Moussaoui was transferred to a federal prison in Alexandria, Virginia. He has sent several letters to his mother proclaiming his innocence.
Moi, il m'a envoyé une lettre en disant « Maman, je n'ai rien fait. Et au moment voulu, je montre que je n'ai rien fait. J'ai les vraies preuves et je montre que je n'ai rien fait. »
Quand même, à la fin de tout ça, est-ce que c'est possible qu'il a fait quelque chose, qu'il n'est pas absolument innocent de tout ça?
Moi, j'ai dit que s'il était dans un mouvement, parce qu'il était dans son mouvement, mais ce n'est pas un assassin. Il a tué personne, il a assassiné personne, il n'a pas participé à les attentats, il n'a fait aucun attentat, donc il est accusé de malfaiteur. D'accord? Mais pas d'assassin. Alors on ne va pas condamner un malfaiteur à mort. Non. À partir du moment où moi, mon fils, il me dit « J'ai rien fait, maman, je te montre au moment voulu que je n'ai rien fait », moi, je crois mon fils, jusqu'à la preuve du contraire. Quand il me montre qu'est-ce qu'il a fait, il le condamne par rapport à ce qu'il a fait. Je suis d'accord. Mais je n'accepterai pas qu'il le condamne parce qu'il a été à tel endroit ou ils l'ont vu à tel endroit. Non, non, je regrette. Pour moi, c'est une injustice. C'est un beau commissaire. Ils ont trouvé personne. Ils n'ont pas trouvé Ben Laden, il a les milliards, bien sûr. Ils n'ont pas trouvé Mohamed Omar, bien sûr. Et ceux-là qui sont en Angleterre, qui se promènent, et ceux-là, ils sont là, et personne ne les touche. Puis c'est incroyable, moi, ça me tue. Ça me tue, ça.
On April 22nd, Zacharias Moussaoui made another appearance at the court in Alexandria, Virginia, where he accused the judge and his own lawyers of conspiring to kill him. He said they had no understanding of Islam, terrorism, or mujahideen, holy warriors. He said he prayed for the destruction of the United States, Israel, and all Jews. When we come back, the connections between Zacharias Moussaoui and other accused terrorists in the United States and Britain. In the months since the September 11th attacks, the evidence against Zacharias Moussaoui has been piling up. At a prison in Seattle, Washington, the Millennium bomber Ahmed Rassam has told the FBI that he met Zacharias Moussaoui in April 1998, when they were both attending the bin Laden training camps in Afghanistan. Moussaoui was also seen with Richard Reed, the man called the Shoe Bomber, who tried to cause an explosion on a flight from Paris to the United States, and with other accused terrorists who all apparently met in London at the Finsbury Park Mosque.
And I do hope that all sides of the House will support these measures so that we can prosecute the war against terrorism successfully here as well as abroad.
After September 11th, the Blair government proposed draconic new anti-terrorism laws for the UK. But there was a contentious debate about civil liberties in the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Lord Megna Desai, a constitutional scholar, was a leading opponent of the bill.
There is no stopping. Even a terrorist has to be subjected to the rule of law. He has rights. And I would say, if you have a case, prove it. If you don't have a case, shut up.
But even if it means giving safe haven to killers.
Yeah. you know, we have to protect our liberties because we cannot treat people arbitrarily just because another government happens to think that they want to, hang that person. We're not going to do that.
Contents. Eventually, a much weaker version of the anti-terrorism bill was passed into law.
And so the contents have it.
At the Finsbury Park Mosque, Abu Hamza doesn't feel very threatened by it.
I mean, nothing, just a bluff. If they wanted to arrest us, they would have arrested a long time. They have already enough laws and capacity to arrest us. It just doesn't look right to arrest a person in a mosque. He's disabled, just preaching what he believes. So it's basically just to try to scare me or to scare me, people by me, and something like that.
At the U.S. Camp X-ray prison in Guantanamo, Cuba, where alleged al-Qaeda soldiers have been transferred from Afghanistan, one British prisoner has reportedly confessed that he was recruited and instructed by Abu Hamza. But the value of the evidence is questionable in a British court. British Labour MP Andrew Dismore has been complaining to the police here about Abu Hamza for some time. He says the British security services have agents inside Abu Hamza's network, but still not enough evidence to charge Hamza with a crime.
I think part of the problem is finding evidence that they can use in court. I think it's a bit like trying, in the case of Abu Hamza, for example, I think it's a bit like trying to track down the head of a big drugs ring. There are evidence trails, but making those evidence trails go back as far as the man at the top is often very difficult. I think there's little doubt about what he's been up to, but a lot of that evidence is not admissible in court because it's been obtained through the security services, or indeed it may, to try and prove the case, involve people giving evidence which would potentially compromise their own safety or effectively negate their ability to provide further information to the security services in the future. So I think they have a very difficult job making a case that is sufficiently strong with admissible evidence to stand up in court.
In late April, there was another round of arrests of suspected al-Qaeda members in Germany. Once again, German prosecutors say they have found evidence that the leader of the group is the well-known London-based cleric, Abu Qatada. At his Noel Road house in London, Abu Qatada says the war against America will continue, even if Osama bin Laden is killed or captured.
So far, there are more than 7,000 people killed in Afghanistan and thousands of children killed in Iraq. I don't think our people will forget what happened to them. Bin Laden did not descend from the sky full of hatred for the Americans, but reality is what made Bin Laden who he is. As long as this reality exists, other Bin Ladens will appear and reappear.
Do you believe that many will rise to take the place of Bin Laden in the fight against America?
Yes, I think so. The US has not reconsidered or changed its policies against other nations. That fact alone will create others who will hate the US just as much.
Since recording this interview, Abu Qatada has disappeared from his Noel Road house. His supporters say he has gone into hiding. The bin Laden training camps in Afghanistan have been destroyed. But the pipeline that fed the camps is still going strong in many Muslim communities in Europe and around the world, where disaffected young men hear the siren call of Islamic radicalism.
L'arrestation de Bin Laden et la neutralisation d'Al-Qaïda ne va pas mettre fin à la menace, et que cette menace est devant nous. Et cette menace, la difficulté de cette menace, c'est qu'elle est précisément protéiforme, et que cette menace ne vient pas nécessairement, au jour d'aujourd'hui, d'un pays comme l'Afghanistan, qui n'est plus ce qu'il était puisqu'il y a un nouveau gouvernement. Cette menace aussi vient de nos cités, à l'intérieur de nos cités. Elle émerge, je veux dire, dans nos banlieues, dans ce que j'appelle ces zones grises, non contrôlées, où il y a des individus qui sont délaissés pour compte de la société, qui sont récupérés et qui sont tentés par l'islamisme radical. Et donc il y a une espèce de foisonnement et une émergence permanente. D'où cette difficulté. Je crois qu'il ne faut pas baisser la garde.
Every night in London, more and more young men, mostly immigrants in dire financial straits, make their way to the Finsbury Park Mosque. Inside, they are offered a free bed, food, and a steady diet of anti-Western, pro-jihad propaganda. All of it dished out by Abu Hamza. Around the Western world, the scene is repeated in many mosques where radical Islamic clerics have taken control. All this feeds on Western values of religious freedom and civil liberties. And Western governments haven't begun to figure out what to do about it.